invite Councilmember Mankey to recite the Pledge of Allegiance. Please turn off your video while we display the banner, and I'll give everyone a moment to do that, and I will do that myself.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Councilmember Mankey. Before we move on to the agenda items, I'd like to acknowledge our remote meeting format. Proclamation 2028 regarding open public meetings is still in effect. Therefore, this meeting will be held entirely remotely. Public comment will be allowed both in writing or verbally. Sign-up sheets were provided by the City Clerk's office via link from the agenda. The video of this meeting will be streamed live as well as recorded and available for later viewing on the city's YouTube channel. A call-in number was provided on the meeting agenda for members of the public who wish to call in by phone to listen live to the meeting. If you've called in, we ask that you mute your device so as not to interfere with the meeting. If a participant fails to mute their connection and causes a disruption to the meeting, the connection will be terminated. For our phone-in callers during staff presentations, staff will make every effort to specify which materials they're referencing so everyone can follow along. At this point, we will take a moment to take roll call of the council members by position. Please say here when the city clerk calls your name.
Councilmember Zorns?
Here.
Mayor Thompson?
Here.
Councilmember Alderks?
Here.
Councilmember McNeil? You're muted, Council. There you go. He's here. Councilmember Mankey? Councilmember Dorr is absent. And Deputy Mayor Alcabra?
Here.
All present with the exception of Councilmember Dorr.
Thank you. Next, I'd like to reiterate some meeting guidelines. For all meeting attendees, please speak clearly and pause frequently. State your name each time before speaking. Mute your microphone when not speaking. If you are also streaming the live video feed, please turn the sound off as there is a delay. For council, please use the raised hand feature in Zoom or your yellow card when you wish to speak, and I will call on you. Speak clearly and pause frequently, and remember to mute your mic when not speaking. The first item on the agenda is meeting agenda approval. Are there any changes to tonight's agenda? Seeing none, we're going to move on to presentations, reports, and briefings. I think we have public engagement opportunities. All right. We can join a Bothell board or commission. The city of Bothell is now accepting applications for boards and commission members. Make a positive difference in our community and apply today at bothellwa.gov/boards. We have a Bothell Way widening project workshop. The city of Bothell is planning improvements to make Bothell Way safer. Share your thoughts during our online workshop taking place February 17th at 7 p.m. Learn more at bothellwa.gov/BWW. You can also drop off hazardous household waste products at UW Bothell anytime between February 25th and 27th from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. for free and safe disposal. Learn more at kingcountyhaswastewa.gov/households. I'm not going to spell that for everybody. All right. We have a proclamation for Black History Month. And I will read that into the record. Whereas, often in the face of incredible prejudice and hardship, African Americans have enhanced and advanced every aspect of American life. And whereas Dr. Carter Godwin Woodson, founder of the Association for the Study of African American Life and History, and noted Black scholar and son of former slaves, initiated Black History Week, February 12, 1926, chosen to coincide with the birthdays of Frederick Douglass and Abraham Lincoln. And whereas in 1976, as part of the nation's bicentennial, Black History Week was expanded and established as Black History Month, now celebrated all over North America as a time when we honor the extraordinary contributions made by African Americans throughout history. And whereas we recognize that our country and community are strengthened and enriched by members of every race, religion, ethnicity, and creed, we reaffirm the city of Bothell's rejection of and all discrimination through its values, policies, and practices. And whereas the observance of Black History Month calls our nation's attention to the continued need to battle racism and to build a society that lives up to its democratic ideals. Now, therefore, I, Mason Thompson, do hereby proclaim February 2022 as Black History Month in the city of Bothell. The city makes this proclamation to celebrate the African American community and as an affirmation of the city's commitment to protect and serve everyone who resides in, works in, and visits Bothell without discrimination, and of its belief in the dignity, equality, and civil rights of all people. All right, and I believe we have Christine Disnute to accept.
Yes, I'm Christine Disnute, and I am the North Shore Parks and Recreation Service Area Program Manager for the City of Bothell. We also have Maisha here, Mason, and she will be accepting.
Oh, perfect.
Yep, she's accepting for UW Bothell.
Fantastic.
Hi, I'm Maisha Manson. Here, I'm the Program Manager for Undocumented LGBTQ students, a part of the Student Diversity Center at University of Washington, Bothell. Thank you for having me and here to accept.
Thank you for coming. All right, I have a proclamation for International Holocaust Remembrance Day. There we go. Whereas the Holocaust was the state-sponsored systemic persecution and annihilation of European Jews by Nazi Germany and its collaborators between 1933 and 1945, and whereas 6 million Jews were murdered and also Roma Gypsies, people with mental illness and physical disabilities, and Poles were also targeted for destruction for racial, ethnic, or national reasons. And millions more, including homosexuals, Jehovah's Witnesses, Soviet prisoners of war, and political dissidents, all suffered grievous oppression and death under Nazi tyranny. And whereas the history of the Holocaust reminds the world of the lessons to be learned in order to help prevent future acts of genocide and offers an opportunity to reflect on the moral responsibilities of individuals, societies, and governments. And whereas we, the people of the city of Bothell, should actively rededicate ourselves to the principles of individual freedom in a just society. And whereas we remember January 27th is the 76th anniversary of the liberation of Auschwitz-Birkenau, where the Soviet army liberated more than 7,000 remaining prisoners. And by memorializing the past, we help to steel ourselves for the challenges of tomorrow. And whereas International Holocaust Remembrance Day has been set aside for the people of the city of Bothell to join together as a community to remember the victims of the Holocaust, as well as to reflect on the need for respect of all peoples. Now, therefore, I, Mason Thompson, Mayor of the city of Bothell, do hereby declare January 27th, 2022 as International Holocaust Remembrance Day in the city of Bothell, in memory of the victims of the Holocaust and in honor of the survivors, as well as the rescuers and liberators. All right. Moving on, we have a library board update. I believe Chair Becky Birch is here to share the update. Chair Birch, I believe you're muted if you are trying to speak.
Oh, sorry. Yes, I'm delighted to be here with you all tonight. It's an honor to present to you. We've been wanting to do this for a while. Wanted to let you know that the rest of the library board is on with me as well. And later on, Erica Olson will be presenting as well. So the theme we're going to share with you today is that the library has been much loved over the last 2 years. And this is the current library board panel that we have in place. Two slots are up for grabs this go round. And Pauline Warden, our Bothell librarian, retired at the end of 2021. And so Katie Boyce is sitting in for her right now. We'll let you know, we'll keep you posted on who gets appointed to that role. So as I mentioned, we've been busy during the last 2 years. We actually crafted a advisory board set of goals back in 2020. And of course, we got stymied by the pandemic. We have 3 goals, and our first goal is really to continue to raise the awareness of library offerings in the community. And a lot of these we have been able to do even despite the pandemic. So one thing that we would like to pursue is perhaps getting library info included in the City of Bothell Facebook site. So we'll pursue that. The other things we've been doing is making sure that we as a board are visible at all key library events. And again, we've been doing a lot of that. We have annually participated in the 4th of July parade. And as you know, we haven't had that in a while. I don't even know if we're going to have it this year, but we do look forward to that. And we always get terrific feedback from people. We would like to see enhanced usage of the library from the North Bothell demographic area, but I think we're achieving that, as I'll show you in a little bit. The third goal is for us to be really knowledgeable about the KCLS operations, processes, and offerings. And so we're involved in budget meetings. We meet other people on library boards from around the area. We always share best practices. And so we try to be very active. The other thing we do anticipate is a levy lift may be coming. I know that they were planning it a couple of years ago, and I think they certainly need the funding now. So that's just something to be aware of. Boy, the libraries were very, very busy during the pandemic. We were fortunate to be one of 2 libraries in the system to get the lockers installed at the library. It's not every library has them, so we were picked for that. And the surprise book bags were a hit, curbside pickup. As you know, many people do not have great access to broadband. And so the library stepped up and provided that. There were many people in the parking lot using it. The larger system really partnered with government organizations for vaccine clinics, helping refugees with immigration assistance. And there were a lot of fun things that promoted socialization among those of us who were stuck at home. Trivia nights, cocktail quarantine book clubs. A lot of our traditional program continued, but in virtual mode. And we had some new programming. So I'll talk a little bit about highlights there, and then Erica will talk about what's planned for this year. I don't know if you know this or not, but a key metric for libraries is circulation measurements. And I have to tell you again, KCLS is a fantastic library system, and we are so fortunate to be serviced by them. We are the 2nd highest in circulation in the United States behind LA County. And that's saying a lot because, as you know, there's a lot of metro areas that are a lot bigger than us. So we are a community of readers. And as you can see, the distribution of physical versus digital downloads is pretty darn close. And the system made a concerted effort to procure more digital items during the pandemic than ever before. I had actually been promoting them to do this, and they haven't done it. And pandemic forced them to do it. So when you look at the Bothell Library situation, we are 3rd of 50 libraries in the KCLS system, just behind Redmond and Bellevue. And we've had significant growth in physical circulation, tremendous growth in the e-materials, and even the Bothell lockers are measured separately, and we've had a 602.4% increase for them. So one of the real trademarks of the Bothell Library is that we offer programs for all ages, all colors, all races, all religions, you name it. We have a program for you. And this chart just outlines a few of the things that we've done. I'll go into a little bit more detail with them. We had a Meet the Artist with Ellen Bustede. It was well attended. And people just love these kinds of events where we get to meet the author and or artist involved. The other thing is a lot of significant outreach was done to North Shore School District schools with meal distribution. We also distributed books, and we promoted that the library was open so that people could take advantage of all the resources, if not in person, digitally. The other thing that we did was we had a mock Newbery Award. And if you don't know about the Newbery, it's a very cherished award for authors of children's books. And so these elementary schools had a chance to participate in a mock Newbery Award competition. And it was really for 5th grade classes, and they developed some real critical and analytical thinking, which, as we all know, is fundamental to continued education and learning. So for the younger kids, grades 1 and 3 in these elementary schools, we have the Otter Award. And it is actually sort of like the Newbery Award for the younger crowd. And so they got to read a lot of books, think about them, write notes, choose their favorite, and then vote for the books that won. So it's a way of getting them to start thinking critically about their reading and building that skill over time. And with the Bothell teens, we have a terrific teen services librarian, and she led quite a few programs. I'm going to highlight 4 of them here. Saving Lives with STEM. These kids did a terrific job, and even looking outside of the Bothell area, they contributed more than 100 hours to help end malaria, improve maternal health, protect endangered species, identify new planets, and more. So it's all about STEM, and they did a great job. The virtual reviewers also had a big impact on KCLS system-wide. Their work is leading to adoption of the model. And so that's really wonderful. The other thing is key for teens is financial literacy. And they actually got involved in evaluated programs from a couple different organizations, the ECU and Junior Achievement. And they developed a budget workshop for middle school students. And that's going to be offered soon. And you know, it's never too soon for people to prepare for their first job. And so they got a chance to do that, and really sets them up for success in the future. Book groups. As a library card holder in Bothell, you can participate in any book group anywhere in the KCLS system. And we have book groups for, like you say, every culture, every particular hobby, any interest you want. The only criteria is that you need to register ahead of time. And I would say do it quickly because they do get full. There's a lot of great interest in these. System-wide, we are doing everything we can to have, resumption of normalcy. Reading with Rover is not on the list yet. If you're not familiar with that, that's when young kids read to various dogs that are sitting with their owners. And if you ever have a chance to observe that, it's really a fun thing to do. The libraries really try to help everybody that's out there. We know a lot of people have been suffering with food shortages and housing. So tenant rights are key. We know that students' education suffered during the pandemic. So we have Study Zone Plus, we have tutor.com, all kinds of things. It's just, the options are vast. And so with that, that really just highlights what we've done in the last couple of years. And now I'm going to turn it over to Erica Olson, who's going to talk to you about what the plans are for this year.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having us. I'm Erica Olson. I'm one of the advisory board members. And Becky, if we could just stay on this slide for just a second.
Sure. Yes.
Or actually, the next slide would be perfect.
Okay.
Thank you. So obviously, programming is still majority online. Protocols are being developed right now to guide the return to in-person programming. We don't have an exact date for when those protocols are going to be ready, but they are in the works right now. Katie has told us that it will be soon. We just don't have a date. In the meantime, online programming is so rich and varied. It is incredible. Just to give you a little bit of an overview, just this week, here's what's going on. So tonight, there's a trivia night. It's a Cahoots trivia night. It's Black History Month, and so the questions all are centered on Black history, athletes, actors, trailblazers, politicians, etc. Tomorrow afternoon, there's an event for artists and hobbyists to help them find online resources to support their craft, places to gather ideas, get inspired, find tools. Then on Thursday evening, there's an incredible author talk. So you can join a discussion with Jason Reynolds, co-author of the book called Stamped: Racism, Anti-Racism, and You, a remix of the National Book Award-winning Stamped from the Beginning. It may be sold out. You may still be able to get a spot. And then on Saturday, you can join this really cool event that I wish I could make it to. I can't. But from the Bellevue Art Museums, they're having a conversation with BAM Biennial 2021 artist Kate Clark, who is going to describe the process behind her installation called Everyday Artifacts: Working Class Waste from 1890s Seattle. This installation features 800 objects that were found during excavation for the convention center expansion. It's so cool. That's just this week. That's just 4 events just this week. The other great news is that back in November, KCLS launched a completely reworked events calendar. So it makes it so much easier to find the events that you might be interested in. The interface is way friendlier. It's easier to browse. It's easier to sign up when you do find things that are interesting to you. You can sort by date range. You can filter by whether you want events for adults or kids or teens. You can filter by the type of event you're looking for, such as story times or author talks or career support or social services. The variety is just really, really impressive. So if you haven't been to kcls.org lately, I urge you to go check it out because it's a huge, huge improvement. Okay, Becky, let's go through the slides.
Want the next one?
Yes, please.
Okay, why is this not moving? There we go.
Oh yes, parking enforcement. So due to the residential construction in the neighborhood, that parking lot is really become quite popular. You may have noticed. So enforcement did need to begin in August of 2021. The parking is for library users. If you're there to use the Wi-Fi, which some people did need to do, and you're going to stay for more than 4 hours, you have to register, and that's okay, but no one is allowed to park overnight. So here is, again, just a little bit of an overview of some of the programming for adults. There are more than a dozen kinds of events that are offered by the library. It's everything, as Becky alluded to, from job and career support to social services. You can get help with your Medicare plan. There are COVID clinics. There is just a wealth of resources that are being offered by KCLS. Then in the category of kids, youth, and teens, all kinds of stuff. The Teen Talk Time has been very popular. The study zones programming has been really, really heavily used. There is also a wealth of resources when it comes to story time. There are scheduled story times in a variety of languages. There are both live events and recorded on demand resources that you can get to at any time. It's just a very, very extensive number of choices when it comes to that. On the website called Tell Me a Story, there's tons of finger plays, rhymes, songs, all kinds of stuff. And then the Rent Smart series. Again, I was with you in October to give you a super speedy overview of that. It was very popular. That will continue into 2021 on all of these detailed and very helpful and practical topics. Again, with the variety that's being offered with arts and crafts programming, the amazing gardening content that's being offered, lots of stuff through Silverkite that allows you to try all kinds of things for free. I actually just signed up for one of the drawing workshops, which is going to be super fun. I've never done that before. Poetry writing, character development workshops. There's just a ton of things that you can, if you've always wanted to try, you have the opportunity to give it a whirl for free with your library card. And so much more, seriously, so much more. There is online everything from citizenship and English language learning, trivia night, as I mentioned, that's happening tonight. There are all kinds of lectures. There's tutoring. There's book groups. There's just such a wide variety. So there really is something for just about everyone.
Would you have any questions or comments?
City Attorney Byrne, did you raise your hand?
I did. I just want to, one of the mementos I've kept over the years, I don't know if you can see it, is that I was the first member of the Newberry Club in 12th grade in 1981, and I've kept this certificate of achievement all these years. So I'm a huge fan of library and reading, so I just wanted to kind of point that out.
That's terrific.
That's very cool.
Councilmember Owens.
Thank you for your presentation. I was just in the library today getting my stack that was like pretty good sized. Always ambitious. I'm good. It's a good thing that there's not calories related to what I check out. So, and I did happen to ask when I was, I'm sure the gal who was checking books out thought I was asking a weird question, but I wanted to know how the parking was there in the parking lot. And she said, no problems. It's been great. So that was good to hear. And I've just appreciated through the pandemic, before the pandemic, always a big library fan. I was thinking you were talking about having guests that come to the library. And I remember years ago when my children were small, Helen Oxenbury came through town. And if you're a children's literature fan, the Pippo books were incredible, and I happened to have a stack of them. And Helen Oxenbury lives in England, and she was in Bothell.
Yeah,
so I went down with all my stack of books, and she signed them for all my kids, and they're cherished. So even though there's a lot of borrowing that happens at the library, there are some keepsakes that come out of the library experience too. So I'm dying of curiosity on what the kids chose for the Newbery Award and the Otter.
We can report back.
That would be great.
Yeah.
So thank you. This was really lovely.
Deputy Mayor Alcabra.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Becky and Erica, for the awesome presentation. I didn't know we did a quarter of this stuff, so that's awesome. I mean, being a data guy, I want to ask some tough questions. No, I'm just kidding. I wanted to understand how you measure, or number one is, you mentioned a lot of KCLS programs in general, with the system, but how do you measure the Bothell branch success?
Well, the primary metric is the circulation metric. I don't know that they actually track which library you belong to when you sign up for an offering, but they may. I can find out.
It's not. I'm just curious if we try. Like, you have all those programs that you run. Do you keep a count of head count of attendees and over time?
I'm sure someone does, but I can get back to you with that information.
Yeah, that would be awesome. And then how can we help you promote all these cool things? You know,
We used to have a Facebook page that we used, and we cannot use it anymore. So if there's any chance that we could hop on the City of Bothell Facebook site or something like that to promote, that would be wonderful. I don't know if it's possible.
thank you. Yeah, I'm sure we'll have more conversations around that. So thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Well, thank you, Chair Birch. Councilmember Aldrich, excuse me.
Oh, thank you. I just jumped in. Thank you for this presentation. It's really exciting to see everything that has been done by the library. And I just remember, so the last day of the library was shutting down, right? It was like the pandemic was starting and they said, we're shutting down at like 5 o'clock. And I went in and grabbed as many, what were they? Oh, what are they called? Great Courses DVD sets as I possibly could.
Yeah,
because I figured we were going to be bored at home for a while. And like, I can't tell you how much the Bothell Library means to me and to my family. One metric is every year at Christmas time, we celebrate the Icelandic book flood holiday called Jóla bókaflóð. And I tell them, instead of buying me books, they should just wrap up our property tax receipt and say, this is how much you paid for library this year. That is your present. Because I use so many digital resources from the library. And, one of the highlights of the pandemic for me was being able to participate in a Bollywood class in my living room. And so really you were doing excellent work. It's really exciting to hear that we're the second largest in the country behind LA. That's amazing to me.
It's phenomenal.
Yeah.
Very much loved.
Yes, I can't wait to share more information with the community and to see a more active role on social media. So if we can find ways to get that word out, I think we have some library champions here who would be very excited to share that information.
That would be terrific. I hope we can all remember how much we love the library when it comes to the levy lift, right? Because like any organization, they need the money to continue.
I think it's one of the best in the country. So thank you very much.
Best investment to make. I think the marketing campaign ought to really emphasize that.
Councilmember Mankey. Oh, you're muted.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Awesome. I just wanted to add my thanks to both of you for serving. I know it's a lot of work, but it's great work, and we thank you for that. I was just at the library 15 minutes before this meeting, walking out with a suitcase full of books from it.
Very good.
I want to say I'm glad to hear you're adding back Monday to the library. We very much miss our Monday trips, so we're looking forward to using the library more frequently. So thank you.
And Councilmember Mankey, if you can turn your microphone up, we can hear you, but you're really quiet. Well, I would just like to echo everybody else's thoughts, and I won't repeat them, but thank you for your service to the community and the city. As part of the board, we really, really appreciate it. And thanks for coming and sharing with us all the cool stuff that you guys are doing.
Oh, you're very welcome, and we're happy to come back at any time.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Next, we have Catherine Jansen to present the legislative update.
Hello, I am here and I was working on sharing my screen. So my name is Catherine Jansen. I'm the executive assistant to the city manager. I'm back for a legislative update for you this evening. This session has thus far been mostly about monitoring bills. Trying to advance my slide. There it is. The session thus far has been mostly about monitoring bills that are working their way through the legislative process. There were almost 2,000 bills somewhere in process last week, and February 3rd is a significant deadline. Bills that are not moved out of policy committees by the end of day on Thursday will be considered dead. Bills that are moved from a policy committee to a fiscal committee have until the end of February 7th to be approved before they are considered dead. One of Council's top legislative priorities is for the legislature to secure funding to complete the improvements to I-405. To this end, House Bill 1990, sponsored by Representative Dewar, authorizes the deferral of sales tax on labor and services for 5 projects along the I-405 corridor, including the north end improvements through Bothell. As drafted, this bill will provide $70 million toward the $450 million funding gap for I-405. There was a public hearing today on this bill at which Shelly Helder represented the city and testified in support. Additionally, House Bill 2089, introduced by Representative Slatter, authorizes the use of Garvey bonds along the I-405 corridor. A public hearing was also held today on this bill, and we thank Councilmember McNeil for representing the city and testifying in support. This evening, I'd like to take a little time to address an issue with our adopted policy manual, or actually your adopted policy manual, which was revised and adopted in October before 3 of our current council members took office. As such, there has been a shift on council and an expressed desire to update the manual. As the guiding document for staff and our lobbyists to reference as we monitor bills through this session, we realize the importance of having the policy manual accurately reflect the council's legislative priorities and goals. However, staff thinks that updating the entire manual midway through the legislative session could potentially be counterproductive for the city and confusing to our legislators. The main point of concern is a statement in the policy manual which reads, "Oppose legislation that erodes local land use decisions and long-range planning." It came to staff's attention that this may not be the current consensus of the council as we were preparing to oppose House Bill 1782 and Senate Bill 5670, both of which have a component that puts zoning within the city at the state level. This evening, I'm not asking for a debate about local control, but rather a revision of the policy manual to read, "Monitor legislation that erodes local land use decisions and long-range planning." Therefore, with the revision in this wording, staff would need council's consideration before we support or oppose any bill dealing with land use. Action of the council is needed to make and adopt any revision to, excuse me, I have a creaky throat. Excuse me. Action of the council is needed to make and adopt any revision to the policy manual. And so I will turn this back over to Mayor Thompson to see if council desires to do anything with this. Thank you.
Thank you, Catherine. I would just, I guess, like to open the floor to council to see if there's anybody that has thoughts. Deputy Mayor Alcabra.
Just thank you, Mr. Mayor. Procedural question: is this like, are there motions, or are we just having a discussion? Like, no decision is being made. What are we trying to do now? Are we going to make the change at the end? If we all agree, obviously.
I think if we just have a group of us that agree, that should do the trick. If we need to make a motion, I am sure that the city attorney will pop his head in and tell us that we have to do that.
You do. If you want to make changes, you do.
Thank you. Councilmember Alders.
I'll jump into the conversation around this proposed change and kind of give some more background for what prompted this. And that is my understanding of the ways that local control has been used historically to allow cities to exclude in various ways, which then leads to some exclusionary policies and not being able to include people who could otherwise afford to live there with other policy decisions being made. I realize this is not a local control debate or conversation. And so I really appreciate that this proposal removes the phrase local control and changes land use decisions. I don't know how I feel about the word erodes, but I do appreciate that land use decisions has been highlighted as something that the legislature will want to comment on and make requirements of cities in how they use land and how they decide to use it. And so I'm definitely in support of that. I'd like to hear some other thoughts from council and maybe come back to me while I think on the use of the word erodes.
Councilmember McNeil.
Thank you, Mayor. We've in the Public Issues Committee pick for SCA, this conversation, local control, has come up quite frequently around a lot of different issues that we as individual cities face. And so while I think that having an adjustment to language is a good conversation, I think it's important for us to realize what other municipalities, jurisdictions, cities are doing with that local control, and where local control, if not at local level, at state level, how that can impact us as far as the long range planning and local land use decisions are. So I would love to hear from city staff, if possible, on if we were to change this language, how and if that would affect us in our own planning and decisions that we're making at the local level. I'd like to hear if there's other jurisdictions that are looking at doing the same thing, and any impacts that they see that we could potentially be looking at, especially when we span not one county, but two counties.
And Councilmember McNeil, I am, excuse me, I'm not sure who's the best person to answer that question for you. I'm going to look to Aaron Lenhart or for some direction on which way to go here.
I mean, I can jump into, I believe, Councilmember McNeil, that all we're doing is changing it so that if anybody on our behalf that we hire wants to lobby on behalf of the city, they would need to come to us for direction on that specific issue. So it's not that we're opposing the idea of local control universally or supporting it universally. We'll take it on a case-by-case basis. And interim city manager, I don't know if you have anything to add to that.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That's what I was going to essentially weigh in, was to say that by changing the language to monitor, that would give staff the opportunity to specifically speak to the city council if we do choose to either oppose or support from the staff level a particular piece of legislation, so that we could have the conversation with council about what the impacts would be to the city of Bothell specifically.
Fabulous. So our position is to still have and maintain the local control while having input from the state. And I know, again, this is wordsmithing the manual. Is that correct? Just changing or removing one word?
Correct. To change it to monitor, so that staff would need council's input before we make any moves at the state level.
Gotcha. So council would have the ultimate decision to oppose legislation. Even though it's not written in there, we would still have that opportunity. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Zorns.
Thank you. I am fine with changing the word to monitor in that it implies a more proactive approach that the city would take in individual issues that come up instead of just a carte blanche, oppose everything. I don't know if that makes sense at all, but I do like the word monitor. And to Councilmember Aldrich's concern about the word erode, I've been sitting here thinking, is there a synonym that speaks well and still has the attention of what the objective of that statement is, which is protecting our city's right and other cities around the area, but we're talking about Bothell right now, our jurisdiction for what is best suits and fits Bothell. And so I support erode unless if you can come up with a synonym that has a similar way of getting people's attention and doesn't have a heavy overuse to it. I think it speaks to the solemnity of a city being able to make decisions for itself, and changing that word to monitor means that we're not being heavy-handed, we're using some discretion about it. So that's where I fall on changing the language.
All right, I don't see any more hands. Councilmember Aldrich.
That was me waiting for other hands. So I, yes, continued noodling on the word erode. The definition means to ravage or spoil. I think that is heavy-handed and overstates the concern about land use and what the legislature can do to our decision-making process of and how that alters our body, which made me think of the word alter. Catherine, can we get that slide back up, please?
Sure.
So we can see it. Thank you. Other words related to alter that might work, that is adjust, alter. So alter, adjust, modify, revamp. And those are the ones, those I would propose any of those words in place of erode. I'm open to hearing council members' thoughts on that.
Councilmember Zorns.
Juan, thank you for the sleuthing and the looking for some alternative words. Those are just for me, those are a little bit too benign. So if you can find a word that, I'm sorry to do that to you. If you can find a word that has a little more strength and oomph to it, I would love to hear it.
Deputy Mayor Alcabra.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The first thought that came to mind was, so monitor, I'm good with that also. And the first thought that came to my mind was, like Councilmember Aldrich's, is to replace erodes to modifies or alters, because at the end of the day, whether it erodes or adds more local control, I feel like we want to be proactive. We can support decisions that allow us to control things more, and we can possibly oppose things that eliminate control. But modify will help us once the particular issue comes to us for discussion, then we can go either way, as opposed to the only when it erodes, then it comes to us. Otherwise, it won't come to us, which might also be a good thing. But those are my thoughts. So what I'm saying, to summarize, I'm saying monitor is good, and having modify or alter and the like. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Mankey.
Thank you, Mayor. Just so I'm clear, is my mic working okay now?
Great, actually.
Excellent, thank you. I'm good on monitor. I like the optionality of that word, so no concerns with that. Throwing out a word for a road replacement, maybe removes. Just gonna put that one out there. That's it.
Councilmember Alders.
Since I have been tasked, I propose another option, which would be reshape, so that it might say monitor legislation that reshapes local land use decision and long range planning.
I got a thumbs up from Councilmember Zorns. Everybody good with that? Councilmember McNeil.
Thank you. Can we see how that reads? Monitor legislation that put the word blank in there, what the word is, local land use decisions. I'm trying to wrap my head around what it is that we're trying to say here, and what it is we're trying to ensure that we still have control of. And so we alter, we add words like that, we remove oppose. Is it that ultimately we want to ensure that we are opposing things that remove control from us locally? Or is it that we want to monitor things that alter? I'm just trying to make sure that we're wordsmithing this, and we'll make sure we fully understand the intent of what this is supposed to be. I believe it is supposed to be that we are opposing stuff that removes local control away from us, or we're monitoring stuff that would remove our local control. So I just want to make sure that I understand how this would read in its totality.
I'm going to jump in and say that I think a more neutral word is probably appropriate, and I don't actually remember the most recent word that Councilmember Alders proposed. But fundamentally, the change that we're making here is saying that we are not taking a universal position all the way either for or against issues of jurisdiction, issues of local control. We are instead going to take those one by one, and not always support or always oppose. We're going to take a more nuanced view, and we are viewing the idea of local control as more neutral. And when it is a good thing, we will support it, and when it's not a good thing, we won't.
So I think I have here the latest for the words: monitor legislation that reshapes local land use decisions and long-range planning.
Councilmember Mankey brought up a word. Can you remind me what that word was?
Yeah, my word was that removes local land use decisions and long range planning.
Yeah, and I feel like that word actually, to me, states what we're trying to. It feels more natural for what we're trying to say here. That's my opinion.
I was going to say effects, but I spoke last, so I didn't get to jump that in there. Councilmember Zorns.
Here I sent Councilmember Alders on a errand, so I do like the word reshapes. However, what was the other word? There were two other options: effects and removes. Right? Are those the two other candidates that we're kind of noodling? Affects the local land use.
I mean,
or removes the local. I have my feeling is that those are a little bit closer than reshapes, but reshapes was definitely was much closer than the other options. But sorry.
Oh no, I'm sorry. I thought you were done, Councilmember. Go ahead.
No, I do like. I guess my first pick would be removes. My second pick would be effects, and my third pick would be reshapes. If I can. I would hierarch them.
I would also just point out to the council that whichever word we choose for this isn't going to materially affect how the city behaves and how the city lobbies. Councilmember Alders.
We have 3 current proposals on the table. I can propose one more, which would be shifts. And that I might make a case for, because that's really what legislation does, right? It changes things. And it would shift if the legislature makes a decision, it shifts our responsibility to comply with state requirements in some way. So I would suggest shift in place of reshape.
Is there anybody in the council that has a strenuous objection to that they would like to get on the table? All right, I don't see anything. Shift sounds good. All right, Catherine, is there anything else that you want to go over in terms of the legislature?
No, thank you. That was it. But I think before we leave this, we do need a motion to accept this change.
Councilmember Alders.
Since we've gotten the reminder, I will motion to accept this change as currently amended.
Councilmember Mankey.
I'll second.
All right. I have a motion on the floor to amend Council's legislative policy manual to monitor legislation that shifts local land use decisions in long-range planning. Laura?
Please say yes or no when I call your name. Councilmember Zorns,
Yes.
Mayor Thompson,
Yes.
Councilmember Alders,
Yes.
Councilmember McNeil,
Yes.
Councilmember Mankey,
Yes.
Councilmember Alcabra.
Yes.
Passes 6-0 with Councilmember Dorr absent and excused.
All right, next up, we have Sound Transit and WSDOT here to give a joint presentation. And I believe Steve Morikawa is going to introduce our presenters.
So good evening, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, and council members. Hope you can hear me. My name is Steve Morikawa. For those of you who don't know me, I'm the Capital Division Manager in the city's Public Works Department. So the city has been partnering with WSDOT, the Washington State Department of Transportation, on the I-405 Express Toll Lanes project, as well as with Sound Transit on the I-405, as well as the State Route 522 Bus Rapid Transit projects through Bothell. We have both WSDOT and Sound Transit representatives here tonight to provide us with project updates and give us a peek into next steps. From WSDOT, we have Lisa Hodgson, who's the I-405 State Route 167 Program Administrator. And from Sound Transit, we have Paul Cornish, who's the Bus Rapid Transit Program Director, as well as Ariel Taylor, who's Sound Transit's Government and Community Relations Officer. If I missed anyone, Lisa, Paul, I apologize and ask you to introduce the rest of your team. Lisa's going to provide her presentation on the Express Toll Lane, about 15 minutes, and then Paul and Ariel will have another 15 minutes for the BRT projects. I'll come back for about a minute just to kind of wrap things up, and then hopefully we'll have about 15 minutes for questions from the council. So with that, welcome, Lisa, and go ahead, please.
Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to present tonight, and thank you, Steve, for the introduction. The other person I have joining me tonight from my program is Caroline Barnett, and she is the program manager for the 522 to the 527 project. Next slide, please. Tonight, I want to take the opportunity to update council on the program. I want to provide an update for the status of our program since we met last time with council in June. And then, as noted, we'll have time for questions following Sound Transit's presentation. Next slide. The I-405 Master Plan and the SR 167 Corridor Plan are our foundational documents that guide our program. And Bothell has been a partner to WSDOT in these efforts since that master plan inception. And we do really appreciate that continued support over the years. Together, this is a 50-mile corridor which forms a viable alternative to I-5, moving people and goods throughout the Puget Sound region. And it's part of our strategic highway plan for the Department of Defense. Our plan is a multimodal, multi-agency plan and has more than 150 individual but coordinated projects. And the main purpose of our program is to deliver a comprehensive strategy to reduce traffic congestion and greenhouse gases and look to improve mobility and safety performance, accommodate planned regional growth, and enhance the quality of life for the environment and also the communities we serve in the corridor. The vision is for a dual express toll lane and bus rapid transit system to help manage that traffic demand, and that's through a variety of modes. And collectively, WSDOT, Sound Transit, local agencies, and our transportation partners have been delivering on that master plan vision. Next slide. I wanted to highlight what is one of the major projects that is slated for the Bothell vicinity, and that's the SR 522 to SR 527 project. And that builds on the existing Bellevue to Linwood Express toll lanes, which we opened in 2015. It will add an additional express toll lane, inline bus stations, and 2 direct access interchanges, improving access for the commuters on the corridor. It will provide a modal connection to the Canyon Park Regional Growth Center and addresses system preservation needs, including fish barrier corrections within our project limits. It's a partnership with Sound Transit. This project will include the Brickyard Inline Bus Rapid Transit Station as well. And we're continuing to move that project to be ready to advertise should funding be provided in this ledge session. We'll cover that a little bit later in this presentation. This project has had a tremendous amount of support from the City of Bothell and our corridor stakeholders. Next slide. And then I just wanted to provide a few slides with some renderings that we have for the major work elements within that overall contract. So when we look at the northern end of the project at State Route 527, this is a major interchange with 405 and is designated at that Regional Growth Center at Canyon Park. It's off to the right on that slide. The project will build a half direct access with connection to the existing Canyon Park Park and Ride. And that is currently provides regional express bus service, metro and community transit service, and will be served by bus rapid transit in the future. And then as a side note, I just wanted to note that although it's not currently funded, the master plan does include a full direct access. So the second part of that to the access to the left. Next slide. Looking at the 522 interchange, this is somewhat challenging as we work through this, as we manage the terrain that crosses the Sammamish River there. So lots of things to think about. The team worked through practical solutions to look for a way to develop a low-cost alternative, and that was through encompassing preserving as much of the infrastructure in that area. And so the flyover ramp that's shown at the top there, being able to keep that intact and working through that area. It does also include a transit hub at this interchange, which provides that system connectivity between bus rapid transit from State Route 522 and Interstate 405. And also those connections to local colleges, UW Bothell and Cascadia College. Next slide. And at our southernmost terminus of the project is the Brickyard Station. This would be a new transit-only inline bus rapid transit station facility. It'll improve those connections to the very popular existing Park and Ride off to the left. And it also builds a pedestrian bridge between the Park and Ride, the station, and then the community to the east side of 405. Later tonight, the City of Bothell staff will review and vote on 4 agreements related to the project. I wasn't going to go into those because that's something the city staff will go into more detail, but I did want to take a moment and thank the Bothell staff for the coordinated efforts to get to this point and bring those agreements forward. And then I wanted to move forward into our legislative proviso work, which we have done since our last meeting in June. So from a historical piece, in 2019, the legislature passed Bill 5825, and this officially combined Interstate 405 and State Route 167 into one account and appropriated $938 million to $1.16 billion in projects. And that would be to be funded through bonded toll revenue. This bill allocated funding of critical projects to help complete that 50-mile managed system. And you'll see that there's 5 projects and the associated allocated funds that are shown on the slide. In 2021, through Bill 5165, you'll see that there are 6 projects that are listed. And that also included funding of construction for North 8th Street Direct Access, which is Project 5 on that list, and funding to address toll infrastructure needs at Northeast 85th Street Interchange, Project 6. And that complements the investment that Sound Transit is making in that interchange. And I did want to note that Project 1 is the State Route 522 to 527 Express Tolling project that I just reviewed. It should be noted that also this is no longer a range, but a total of $1.178 billion in need. And the impacts, wanted to talk about the impacts from the pandemic. Those have presented unique challenges for everyone, including our program. We do understand that traffic and tolling are down, and therefore the timing and the ability to bond has changed. I guess the simple way to look at this is there's less money to complete the projects that were appropriated in 2019. And then understanding that that revenue was down, the legislature did request WSDOT to work with the Office of the State Treasurer on 2 provisos that look at a variety of ways we can optimize delivering projects as close to the original schedule as possible. Next slide. So Senate Bill 5165, Section 306, directed our agency to look at the State Route 522 to 527 project in an effort to find ways to phase that project to advance that infrastructure needed for bus rapid transit. In general, through that process, this effort didn't find a solution that would deliver the system benefits earlier. Section 209 directed WSDOT to look at the entire corridor, so all of those projects, 6 projects that were listed, and how bond proceeds could cover the systems of funded projects that were listed in the 2021 current law budget. Next slide. We started our analysis in last June, and we worked with our stakeholders through the end of the year. We did have extensive engagement with our executive advisory group, as well as our interagency working group, which represents our cities and counties along the 50-mile corridor. The executive advisory group also includes corridor legislatures, but we also held a briefing with some key legislators throughout that process. It does try to record here that there was a lot of interaction. These are just the key meetings that were held, but we also had many meetings outside of this, so a tremendous amount of collaboration working on this proviso. The culminated effort of that, we delivered a preliminary financial report last September, and that was in an effort to allow for questions. And then in December of last year, we submitted the final report with no substantial changes. Next slide. So as we moved through this process with our executive advisory group, it was recommended early delivery of projects to align with Sound Transit's bus rapid transit and consistent express tolling user experience on the corridor. It was also recommended that we continue to work with the governor's office, the legislature, and the treasurer on those potential funding scenarios to fill the shortfall. Next slide. So as we work through that proviso, we have what's called the modified delivery scenario that looked at prioritizing some system benefits and synergies. And that prioritization was projects that infused higher revenue generation. And this effort resulted in a range. You can see on there, it's a plus or minus $175 million to a $450 million need. In particular, this modified delivery focused on the delivery of our North End project, so SR 522 to 527, that complements bus rapid transit, And also consistency with the SR 167 and the opening of express toll lanes from Bellevue to Renton. At the lower end, with the plus or minus 175 million, this can be achieved and meet those goals. However, it did push out key projects, mainly interchanges, significantly out in the future, somewhere in the neighborhoods of like 10 years. This did not meet or align with our stakeholder expectations. So the upper end of that range, the plus or minus 450 million, reflects keeping the priorities as noted, but moving those projects that were out in time closer to the 2021 current law delivery timing. A couple things I just want to note is this range does include escalation, and it delivers key projects sooner than is in the 2021 current law delivery schedule. And then also drawing some notice to the peach box in there. So that notes a request for a commitment from Ledge in January to meet an early delivery schedule on State Route 522 to 527, which reflects an opening at the end of the 2026 year. Also understanding this could be a challenge, addressing the funding gap over the next 6 weeks of Ledge session would push that north end contract out just a few months, opening in early 2027, but would still align with Sound Transit's north segment of bus rapid transit in 2027. I think the key takeaway here is that legislative action is needed this session to address the funding gap with the modified delivery scenario. Next slide. We also looked at current law budget. In comparison, the funding gap for this is also at that plus or minus 450 million. A couple key things to note is that it does not deliver those early system performances we talked about, and it does not include escalation. However, it does still require legislative action this session if we want to continue on the schedule of current law budget. Next slide. And just some summary things. So the recent released governor's budget focused on the advanced modified delivery and reflects the financial plan recommendations that cover the $450 million gap. If the funding gap is addressed in this ledge session, delivery of the North End contract schedule will advance our construction contracting that will deliver the necessary infrastructure earlier than current law and will align with Sound Transit's bus rapid delivery in 2027. And it aligns with our delivery of SR 167 toll upgrade, providing a consistent 50-mile managed system. Key items to note in this funding gap is the amount noted for both the ranges for the modified delivery as well as the current law delivery is reflective of what we knew at the time of the analysis. The Treasurer's Office and the Washington State Transportation Commission will play a role in the final assumptions and steps leading up to the bonding of toll revenue. And without legislative action in 2022, key projects will move out in time. System benefits will be delayed and the needed infrastructure for bus rapid transit on 405 will be moved out and the gap will change. Next slide. Just wanted to thank you for your time tonight. I also did want to acknowledge Mayor Thompson and testifying recently, as well as what you heard tonight with Bothell representation at the bills today. And we do continue to appreciate Bothell's continued support of the program. And from here, I was going to hand it over to Paul Cornish, and he will walk through his Sound Transit presentation.
Okay, great, fantastic. And Ariel is going to put some slides up for us. Again, I'm Paul Cornish. I'm the Strategic Projects Director for the BRT program, and Ariel Taylor is here with me as well from our Government Relations Group. And we have a third member of our team who is not here tonight, but you'll be seeing him more often. And as we've moved into the final design phase, we split the BRT work between the Sound Transit delivered work, which will be the work that we're going to be providing at the City of Bothell streets. Rick will be the lead on that, director for that, and I will maintain my role on the third-party delivery projects, which is working hand in glove with Lisa. So you'll continue to see us together for a while, yeah, which is great. So Rick cannot be here. He's a great asset to the team. He has a son's basketball game tonight, so he is unavailable, but he will be here the next time, I'm sure. So next slide, please. So what I wanted to do today, because there are so many new faces to the council, is to go through the BRT elements, which the council maybe have seen once or twice, but I thought since we have some new council members, I will try to get you up to speed on that. And then go through the status of the BRT program and where we're at, if that sounds good. So BRT, or Stride is our name, is a new line of business for Sound Transit. It was passed as part of ST3, and we have two corridors, I-405 from Linwood to Burien via Bellevue, and then 522 145th corridor, basically from the South Shoreline Station that's being built as part of Linwood Link over to the 405. For the 405, we're going to have 10-minute headways, so a bus every 10 minutes in the peak hour and every 15 minutes in the off-peak. On 522, it's actually more frequent than that. It's 10-minute all-day service. And the service will roughly be 19 hours Monday through Saturday, then up to 17 hours on Sunday. Next slide, please. So again, this is a new line of business. This is the map in the upper right. And we have on 405, we have two lines. We have we'll call S1. You'll see it as S1, which is the southern end of 405, which runs from Burien to Bellevue, goes on 154th up 518, and then gets in the 405 express toll lanes that Sound Transit and WSDOT are currently building together right now, which is another great example of our partnership. S2, which we'll speak to probably a little more tonight, is actually from Bellevue to Linwood up the 405, then down the 5 a little bit into Linwood. And both these lines, they act independently. They Burien to Bellevue and back, and Bellevue to Linwood and back. And what we have been working on is a series of capital improvements to improve speed, transit reliability, and then access to our BRT stations. We have a new station, a station design that will be very distinct to the BRT, and I have a picture of that coming up. We have parking facilities in both corridors. These parking facilities have all been deferred via the recently completed Sound Transit realignment process. So they're still in the project, but they've been deferred up to 10 years and even longer. We have a new maintenance base or operation facility, which will be in Bothell. I'm going to talk a little bit about that later. We have a new fleet. We have a branded fleet. You will definitely know what a BRT bus is coming with its colors. The branding, again, we are Stride. And then we have all our BRT stations will have a rider information system. So you know where your bus is, you know when it's coming, you can work with that. Next slide, please. So here's an example of our station design. And what we wanted for all of the BRT stations, whether or not in the 522 or the 405, to look fairly similar. So you would know you were riding Stride, you're on our system. But we also recognize that we have many different environments. On the left is what a station at a freeway stop could look like. And on the right is that same station modified a little bit to fit the character and fit the size of the neighborhood. This could be like an arterial street or State Route 522. So what we use is a kit of parts for the station. So it's the same look and feel, but you can adjust the size based on the location and based on the expected ridership, but we are intending them to look the same. So you know when you're in the system, you are riding that system. Next slide, please. So program readiness. I'm going to go a little deeper into the projects themselves. Next slide, please. So this is the 522 145th corridor. It's 9 miles long. It has the 3 parking facilities that were deferred. It connects to light rail in the west at the South Shoreline Station. So I like to say that BRT station is under construction. It comes down 145th, where we have a series of transit speed and reliability improvements. And these are like transit queue jumps. So the buses can get ahead of the rest of the folks when the signal turns green. We recently completed a funding agreement with Shoreline that actually contribute to a roundabout at 145th and 5th, which will help the speed and reliability of the buses as well. So we have and we have some other smaller improvements on 145th. when we go around the corner into Lake Forest Park, and it's kind of hard to tell, these are the purple lines, is, there is one business access and transit lane. We call those BAT lanes, and that's what the buses will run in, and vehicles can get in there if they make a right turn at the next driveway. So BAT lanes on 522 is really where they can make the buses run well. There's one direction in Lake Forest Park. This project will add that second business access and transit lane. So we have BAT lanes throughout Lake Forest Park. They exist in Kenmore, so we don't need to build those BAT lanes, but we do install the stations as well as along the corridor. And then finally on Bothell, we're making some improvements in State Route 522. And I always like to come to the Bothell Council and talk about Bothell Stage 3, which was a project that the city designed and Sound Transit funded through ST3. It's almost done. I think you have some weather kind of caught us at the end, so I haven't put the final touches on it, but we could not be more happy with the city of Bothell staff and the city of Bothell and how that has turned out. That has come out. It looks great. They work well. They had your typical challenges you always have with construction. So we are just very pleased as punch that this partnership is going so well. And that makes us very, very happy. And we enjoy working with the city of Bellevue, city of Bothell. And then we'll leave 522 and go through, we can go back to that slide, and go through a downtown Bothell proper. And then we'll go out, turn out 185th and up Beardsley Way, where we have a partnership with UW Bothell. They're helping us build some work out there too. And finally, we'll go to the 405, and that's where we're going to meet the 405. So that is the 522 BRT alignment. And the next one is I-405. Again, this is 37 miles long from Linwood to Burien via Bellevue, 11 stations, 3 cities, 3 parking facilities that again have been deferred, a transit center in Renton. This connects to light rail in Linwood, downtown Bellevue, and at Tukwila International Boulevard, really helping bring together a lot of the transportation options on the east side. The rest section for 2042 is 19,000 to 26,000 a day. And again, those are 2 distinct lines that will run independently, which is great because we're scheduled is to actually open S1 or the lower one in 2026 and the northern one in 2027, such as Lisa said. So that their independence has given us some flexibility when we open that. So that's kind of the overview. I have the next slide, which I stole from WSDOT, is actually the Burien Inline, the Brickyard Inline Station. This would be adjacent to the existing park and ride. And this, because of the WSDOT partnership of building those extra express toll lanes to the north, just north of Canyon Park where they in now, really lets the BRT run quickly. It lets it run a lot faster and it makes it so the running time so much smaller. The next slide, please. This is, Lisa spoke to this too, this is the transit hub. This is where State Route 522 meets I-405. And here in the upper left is where we're going to have the transit hub. And this is where the I-405 BRT will meet the State Route 522 BRT. So this is where the 2 lines come together. And this drawing is pretty simple. It's actually a pretty complicated connection to make these work, and then also have the 522 be able to come back north and get into campus or walk towards campus. And we spent a series of workshops with Bothell staff, Sun Transit, WSDOT, UW Bothell, Cascadia, Metro staff, figuring out how this is all going to fit. And all this will come together in the transit hub, which we will be building in partnership with WSDOT and Lisa in that North End project. And what you'll also see here is we're going to put in some charging stations for the buses. The goal is to have half of the State Route 522 BRT fleet open with electric buses. And so we're going to have charging stations here at the hub, as well as charging stations down at the South Shoreline station. So that's one thing that you'll see is we'll have the charging stations there. And we're very excited about this. It's Sound Transit's first foray into battery electric buses. And so we're very excited to have the opportunity to let the BRT be part of that new endeavor. Next slide, please. So the status of the project, all the environmental work is complete. The findings have been issued. We'll refine the scope through the preliminary engineering. Last year, we went to the Sound Transit Board with what's called a project to be built. And this is a big day in the life of any project. This is where we've been working with our partners. We've refined the scope of the project. The environmental work is done. And this is the project that we would like to move forward with into final design. So that has happened for both the Bus Space North, I-405, BRT, and the State Route 522-148. So we are in the final design phase, and in some cases, the construction phase. So we're in lots of phases, but this project has moved forward really, really well. We're very excited about that. Next slide, please. How about the slide up? Next slide as well. So we are constructing a bus maintenance base in Bothell, and this is up in the Canyon Park neighborhood, kind of up Canyon Park Business Park. Up I-405 meets State Route 527. This was approved by the S23 voters as part of the BRT program. We looked at 30 some sites with a list of criteria. I think we talked about this a little bit before the council, and the site that has been selected was the one in Canyon Park Business Park. Again, that environmental work has been completed, and that was the project to be built by the board was to keep it at that site. Next slide, please. We're looking for a site that could accommodate up to 120 buses. This is the BRT buses as well as additional regional express buses. Again, we're gonna have electric charging stations for battery electric buses, and then we're also gonna design it to convert it when more of our BRT system becomes battery electric buses. We can convert that over. Again, it's the facilities, the maintenance for the buses, employee parking, fuel facilities, bus washing, fencing, landscaping, lighting, stormwater management. Next slide, please. So what else is going on? What are the next steps up here with the city? So we're going to start our property acquisition process. And this is something that we'll be doing hand in glove with Bellevue staff. Well, sorry, I worked for Bellevue for like 11 years. I do that a lot. Sorry about that. With Bothell staff. Bothell staff know they know the city well, and we enjoy looking with a partnership with them to move forward. We are working with the city on a transfer of development rights study for the Bus Space North to see if is the development right capacity from our site that could be redistributed to another site, because both the Sound Transit and the city share the vision for Canyon Park as is a regional growth center, and what can we do to work together in that. And that is going on right now. Bothell staff are the lead for that. We are a funding partner with that, and so that is in progress. And then we'll continue our community briefings and outreach and project status and timelines as we go along. So I know that was pretty fast, but that was basically the project to be built. Has been set by the board, which is great with all the help we've had from our partner agencies. We're moving into final design. We are looking forward to moving hand in glove with Lisa on that North End Express Toll Line project, because when that happens, we'll have all the North End 405 BRT stations in the center of 405, except for at the transit centers at the ends. And that will be really something that will be really make that leg work. So that's all I had to present tonight.
So first of all, thanks to Lisa and Paul and Ariel for being here. I also see Caroline and Samantha from WSDOT. So thank you for your presentations. So WSDOT, Sound Transit, and Bothell staff, we continue to work together to get these projects built. We're trying to make the best use we can of each agency's abilities and knowledge and efficiencies to meet all of our goals and interests. Like Lisa indicated, later tonight, city staff will bring forward agreements and discuss how WSDOT and Bothell have kind of teamed up to most efficiently move the Bothell portion of I-405 express toll lanes, that project forward, because some of the work's on local streets. In terms of the State Route 522 bus rapid transit project with Sound Transit, they will complete design of the portion through Bothell. Both Sound Transit and Bothell staff are working together on agreements that will document concurrence on the design, as well as how best to streamline coordination of the project through design, as well as right-of-way, public outreach, like Paul said, and the permitting phase. We anticipate being back in front of the council with the Sound Transit agreements, the proposed agreements in the near future. So these are really exciting projects, and we know you have questions. So we will have about 15 minutes, hopefully. What I would do for most efficiency, so Paul, Lisa, or I aren't looking at each other who's going to answer. When you ask the question, perhaps you can direct it at either WSDOT, Sound Transit, or city staff. That would probably help a lot and save some time and get more questions in there. So with that, I guess we'll open it up for questions.
There's got to be questions. Deputy Mayor Alcabra.
Fine, I'll wait. It's a general question. I don't know. I guess maybe it is a question for, it's not a city staff, because I want to ask about the 145th, adding bus lanes there for the BRT to Shoreline Station. Can you very briefly describe how you're going to fit another lane in there? If you can. I drive down there, I have family there, so I drive that street all the time. So I know what it looks like. I actually lived in Shoreline a little bit too. So just curious.
Sure, I will take a go at that. That is a very tight corridor. I know exactly what you're talking about. A couple things, like on the east side at 522 where it meets 145th meets 522. We're adding a bus lane to make a left turn, and we figured out with a lot of help from City of Seattle traffic engineers that we could actually repurpose one of the existing lanes for that. We were actually we're restriping, so there's going to be one more lane eastbound to make that right turn, then going westbound. Because when you look at the numbers, they really didn't need that lane. So that's a great example of working with city engineers to figure out how to restripe that, so we don't have much of an impact down there. Up at 15th, we are adding what I call the queue jumps. So these are much shorter lanes. They don't go the whole lane. And that is where the light's red, the bus can go out, have their own lane, and then they'll get a signal to go ahead up the queue, to jump the queue. And then the real tight spot is as you get closer to 5th, adding that lane there. And that is what is one of the really nice things about this project that we have with WSDOT and Shoreline, is that bat lane, which is supposed to go back all the way to the 12th and maybe beyond, only needs to go to 8th. So we were able to shorten that because we have so much more efficiency working with the roundabout up there. And we have a very unique feature, which is called a transit. There's going to be a transit meter at that roundabout, so it will stop the cars when the bus comes along. And that really lets us shorten that business in transit. I mean, it is a tight corridor and there will be some property impacts, but we've been really working at how do we purpose some of the existing pavement where we can, the other roundabout, traffic meter, transit meter, how do we make this shorter? So it's been quite the traffic engineering project to figure this out. But we've been trying to minimize those impacts as best we can with these very creative ideas that we've been getting from our partner agencies.
Thank you.
Councilmember Alders.
Thank you, Mayor. And thank you for these presentations tonight. It's really helpful to, one, make sense of what's in our agenda, and also better picture what is being proposed in these areas. My particular question is for Sound Transit. Along the lines of the, the bus barn in Canyon Park, and so what I could see from the visuals that you shared tonight, that bus barn is intended to put buses nearby 405 so that they can get on 405 and be part of that. Is that also going to include buses that go north and south on 527 for transit purposes?
Well, all the BRT buses that for the 405 north, south, and the 522 BRT will all be coming out of that bus space, and they'll come out at, I forgot the name of the local street, get on 527, and then we'll disperse to the 405 north and south, and then 522 and 145. So all the buses will be housed there. They'll come out on 527 and then go the directions that they need to go.
Great. Okay, so I understand that correctly. The other part of that question is, does that also include bus service up and down 527?
Well, I guess part of, like you guys talking about, we're making room for additional regional express buses, and those are the buses that are housed up at Snohomish County right now. So I don't know if with the specific routes that they would be coming in and out of that bus base, but we are accommodating future storage for the buses on the north end. I don't know the exact routing or if they've actually determined that yet, but we are creating the capacity so there could be regional express buses coming out of there.
Okay, thank you. And part of the reason why I ask is because this is a conversation that came up on the Planning Commission over the last couple of years, and I was formerly a planning commissioner. So I believe that there is a hope for rapid transit and stride going up 527, but Sound Transit. Ariel has something to say about that.
You can finish your thought.
Okay, great. That I know that is anxiously being awaited by people on the north end of the city so that we can get up and down 527 faster. So yes, please, Ariel, tell us.
Yes, I think I know what you're talking about. So our partners, our agency partners who are not WSDOT, who are actually community transit up in Snohomish County, they are the ones proposing that rapid service along 527. Their buses are likely not to be housed with us because this is a Sound Transit facility, whereas they will be running community transit buses. But we have still not gone through, our intricate planning of what buses will be housed where, who's going to operate this system, the whole thing. So that we are definitely in conversations with our partners at Community Transit, also our partners at King County Metro, about what the use of this facility will look like. But yes, I do know about the transit that you're talking about on 527. And we're happy to come back and talk with you all about that and our project partners at Community Transit if necessary.
Ariel, you were ready for that one. All right, anybody else? Going. All right, I have a couple quick questions. Number one, I'm just super happy to still see that pedestrian bridge at Brickyard in the plans, going to both sides, not just to the park and ride, but also to the place where people live. And I have a question. Which agency is primarily responsible for designing the transit hub at the 522-405 interchange?
I would say both of us. I mean, WSDOT is the lead on that,
okay,
what they do, but we love it. Then we have our actual lead on this is an architect, and we have other architects that we bring in and civil engineers. And
okay.
So it's really a joint effort.
I wasn't sure who to direct the question toward, per the instructions that I wanted to follow. And I know
might just add though, on that. So it'll be delivered design build. So we will give the preliminary design, and then the design builder will take it to final design, and we'll lay out the criteria that's required as part of the contract. So just a little nuance there.
Has the criteria for the contract then not been laid out there? Is that still ongoing?
It is I would say it's pretty much decided, but it's in the process of being written in contractual language for the contract.
I get that this is probably too late in the game. Much later, I brought this up at an EAG meeting, I don't know, 2020, 21 sometime, but doing all of this work at a transit hub, that's right next to a river. And while we're already in there doing the work to put this together, not putting a pedestrian bridge over the river that connects like the south half of Bothell to that transit hub in means other than a single occupancy vehicle seems like such a huge miss. And I'm sad about that. I'm super excited for the service and everything. Is it just absolutely too late? Is that something that like, is that a funding issue? Like that is the problem, or is that a, we're too into the design build process? Like what would be the big barrier there?
I think it's a lot of what you just said. So one, timing wise, we're very far into this. It's not part of the original scope, so the funding isn't there. I think what we brought back to the city was there might be some opportunities for some grants, and recognizing that you guys have done a pedestrian facility down to the west of here, and what those costs could look like, and whether or not there was opportunities for some sort of grant or something. But it isn't in the original scope, and the funds aren't there for it.
Yep. All right. There's not really anything else I have other than I'm super excited to get this service up and running finally. It's been delayed a little longer than I think we all wanted by the pandemic, but we appreciate your work and your help on just getting this ready to go. I am looking forward to testifying more in the legislature and seeing where that money comes from, whether it be from ARPA funds, whether it be from Garvey bonds. I believe Representative Slatter has a bill for that. We're looking forward to trying to help get this paid for and get it up and running. And thank you all for your time.
Thank you too.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for your time.
All right. Aaron, I think we're up for the city manager report.
Thank you, Mayor. I have no report this evening. I'll catch you next week.
Wow, there's something we did that saved us time in this meeting. In keeping, so now on to council committee reports. Councilmember Zorns.
Well, I did a summation and I'm apologizing now because it's like almost 3 pages. I'll try to go quickly, but it's kind of exciting stuff. So my first report is for NPRSA. They're getting ready to do an audit. Actually, they've just started an audit like what the city just went through, and they're expecting to do their exit later this month, so it should go fast. In the Senior Citizens Center, the bathroom repairs and modernization is done. Bids are out for HVAC, and they're expecting sourcing problems, so anticipating the end of summer. So everybody is hoping that the existing HVAC system will hobble through and make it through this summer for the seniors and community that goes down there. Repairs, if you've been on East Riverside Drive, you've already seen repairs on the bridge starting. And because the Senior Citizen Center is celebrating their 50th year this year, working on the bridge, their theme is rebuilding bridges. There is buckling carpet, which is a tripping hazard in the Health and Wellness Center, so that's being replaced. Outdoor sports court is moving forward. Conversion of an old residence at the center is turning into a multi-generational center, which is very exciting. As homeschoolers know, multi-generational is kind of a big thing to have within a community. So on a family level or community level, I'm very excited about that. The Senior Center has a new veterans group. The food bank is growing. The medical borrowing equipment has heavy demand, and there's 5 new board members. And then just for management, and PRSA is now going to directly use a group called Gordian Group for job order management. So we won't be using the ILA with Everett after that. On to RIA 8. And I was so glad that Councilmember Aldrichs joined us. I hope she enjoyed those. It was pretty cool. The DEI is gaining insights on watershed areas around Puget Sound. It's very important. A lot of communities who haven't been historically involved with our shorelines are becoming more involved. Ballard Locks is getting some infrastructure done. Sockeye numbers are down 50%. We're looking at a 10-year average. Chinook is up 178%, which is really important to our South Orca population, South Sound Orca. And Coho numbers are up 196, so that's good. Cedar Chinook went up by 84%, and Sammamish Chinook went up by 200%. Here's where we could have some potential loss. With the flooding that we had, there was a scouring of the rivers there, so we don't know what kind of hit happened with the spawning that took place this fall. Olympia, Raya 8 is watching, and we did a letter supporting some updates that Olympia is talking about. One of them is a tree height around different land uses in your shorelines, riparian areas. Stormwater management, clean water, Raya 8 is also keeping an eye on fish barrier passage, salmon and salmon population monitoring is also being discussed in Olympia. Then we had a Mountains to Sound presentation. They are one of 55 heritage areas in the country, and Washington State has 2 of those. Then we signed a letter of support and partnership with Mountains to Sound. I don't know if you're familiar with that group, but if they're worth tracking. So if you're on Instagram, you might just like them so you can kind of see some of the work that they're doing. Kokanee count in 2018 was 19 little kokanees. And then in the last 5 years, it's been over about 300 kokanees per year. So 300 isn't a lot, but it's a lot more than 18. And one example is they did a Zucchius Creek restoration in Sammamish. It went from no kokanees to seeing kokanees again. So that's pretty exciting. And then they're going to continue to focus in on non-native fish, the bass, the perch, and the sunfish, who are predators of the kokanee and Chinook. And you may have also heard in the news, and they also discussed that milfoil is a habitat for these predators. And so the removal of milfoil, if you've ever been in Lake Washington or along the slough, you know how enthusiastic that milfoil can get. So they are doing some battle with that. So one question, raise of hand. It's not obliged reading, but would you like to get the agenda forwarded so you'll get it 6 times a year? Anybody interested in having it? Okay, I'll forward that to you. And then the last piece is there were 3 of us that went to AWC, council members Mankey and Alders. I were there. I don't know if anybody else went there. And Catherine was there. And I went to a federal grants workshop, which I thought was interesting. And I know our staff is on top of it and they know more details than I know of, but I thought Bothell might be able to tap into this. One, it's the infrastructure funding that's going on. One is providing capital for transit, treescape expansion, porous pavement. These are, things that all interest us, and charging stations. Because how many charging stations do we have in Bothell that I know of? 4, 5? Where are they?
Well, we have a few at City Hall.
Okay. Oh, downstairs in the
City Hall
garage.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah. And I think one up north, and staff are looking at those options. And thanks to the help of Travis Lumpkin, our representative from Gordon Thomas Honeywell, he's working with staff to figure out what our opportunities are. So
see, I knew you guys would be on top of that. And so that's very exciting to hear. The one other thing is that they're doing, this is beyond Bothell because we really don't have any dams, but there's also funding for dam safety. And since our hydroelectric power is renewable, I would really love on a state level anything we can do to encourage healthy fish ladders and better dams, because we're going to be tapping into more electrical need. And then there's also a Western water reclamation funding that's going on, and I have a hunch California's going to tap into that, but at some point Bothell might be able to find an application, and that's my sum total.
Councilmember Mankey.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to see if we can get some council consensus to look at pulling together the Public Safety Committee. It hasn't been convened in quite a while, it's my understanding from talking to staff, but I know we've got some challenges with hiring those vacant radar navigator positions and public safety police officer positions. And I'd like to just see if we can bring that Public Safety Committee together with staff to talk about what the challenges are and solutions for hiring, and bring some ideas back to council for further discussion. I know staff's done everything they can for hiring, but I think it could be useful to have collaboration between council committee members and staff members to talk more about it, and then of course bring it back to council for discussion.
Councilmember Zorns.
Okay, quick question. Could we make, I think all the members who would be involved in that committee are here tonight, aren't they? Could we also include discussion of body cameras and ancillary things for our public safety as well? Could we have that discussion? Is that something that you would like to have, Councilmember Mankey?
Yeah, we could definitely have that conversation as well. My biggest concern is just around filling and staffing the navigator and police officer positions, just given the fact that we've been having the levy for a couple of years now, and we haven't been able to fill those. So those would be priority one for me. And then if there was discussion around body cameras, I definitely think it's worthwhile having, but that would be priority 2 on my list.
Well, I will tell you, I know that when I was out doorbelling, I heard people very concerned about not seeing cars patrol, our police patrol like they used to in their neighborhoods, and they feel pretty, I think abandoned might be too, but they feel vulnerable. So it'd probably be worth having that conversation. When I hear about cities all around us who are incentivizing lateral moves, and we worked really hard to get the good officers that we've got, I'm a little concerned about a practical way of encouraging them to stay and be a part of Bothell. So yeah, I wouldn't mind carving out time and being part of that discussion.
Councilmember Aldrich.
I welcome seeing the Public Safety Committee being reconvened, and would very much like to have some of those conversations and see how council can support the police department in those efforts. I think that's all the consensus you need.
I think so too.
We need 4 staff. I was told that we needed to have council approve. So
hi, I'm 4.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. Perfect. I went to the North King County Mayor's meeting today, and that was the first time they've been convened this year, so it was mostly a getting to know you session. And last week I went to Congresswoman Del Bene had a roundtable with North End cities where we got to talk infrastructure and some of our needs, and represent some of the city's needs to our federal representatives. And I guess now we can go on to visitor comment, because those are the only committee reports I have. In keeping with Governor Jay Inslee's emergency proclamation 2028 regarding open public meetings, the city has accepted visitor comment in writing, as well as accepted sign-up sheets for those who wish to speak at tonight's meeting. Written comments submitted to the city clerk no later than 3 p.m. today were forwarded to all city council members and are all part of the record. Laura, do we have anybody signed up for visitor comment?
We do not have anybody signed up. We did not receive any written comment. I will ask if there's anybody in the audience that wishes to speak. Please use the raise hand function now. We'll give them a minute to do that. I'm not seeing anybody, Mayor Thompson.
All right, thank you. All right, do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda? Deputy Mayor Alcabra.
I move to approve the consent agenda.
And a second? Looks like Councilmember Aldrich's with the second. The do we do a roll call for this or move?
Yes.
Okay, fantastic.
Please say yes or no when I call your name. Councilmember Zorns?
Yes.
Mayor Thompson?
Yes.
Councilmember Alder?
Yes.
Councilmember McNeil had to leave the meeting, so he is now absent and excused. Councilmember Menke?
Yes.
Councilmember Dorr is also absent and excused, and Deputy Mayor Alcabra.
Yes.
Passes 5-0 with Councilmembers Menke, McNeil, sorry about that, and Dorr absent and excused.
You're muted.
You're on mute, Mayor Thompson.
Thank you. All right, moving on to Agenda Bill 22009. Deputy Mayor?
I'm sorry to, I don't know what the protocol is. Can we take like a 5-minute break?
Yes, we absolutely can. All right, it is 7:58 by my clock right here. We will see you at 8:03. like we've got everybody back. So we are going to move on to Agenda Bill 22009, consideration of resolution adopting updates to the City Council Protocol Manual and approving the council referral request form. Laura? Oh, you're needed. My turn.
Thank you, Mayor Thompson. Yes, on January 11th, we brought the protocol manual to the City Council for review and for direction on some key points. And those points have been incorporated into the protocol manual. One of those was to have a better way of allowing council to get items on the agenda, at least for discussion. And so with that, we incorporated a city council referral request form. So this evening, we are asking you to approve the resolution, which will approve the protocol manual updates, as well as a motion to approve the council request form. And I can go over what the changes were that we made at the meeting on January 11th, or I can just open it up for questions or comments, if anybody has any.
Why don't we see if there are questions or comments, and if we want to go through that and see what the council says.
All right.
Councilmember Zorns?
I went through with it with basically a fine-tooth comb and nothing leapt out at me personally. So I'm good with the way it looked like all the corrections were made that we had made. So I don't have any modifications. I don't know if anybody else has any modifications they want to make, but for the changes that we suggested, I'm good with it.
Deputy Mayor?
Great.
Yeah, sorry. I wait for you to say something, Mayor, and then I just jump in.
It works.
One question. I'm like Councilmember Zorns. I didn't find anything with the changes. One thing I may have missed is did you, Laura, did you actually post the form that we're going to use to submit our agenda items somewhere for us to take a look at, or no?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
For us to submit agenda item suggestions.
Yeah, we changed the order of business to allow for a couple of things. One is to allow for board and commission regular reports, board and commission reports. And then we added to the order of the agenda, projected agenda discussion. So our thought is with this form is that once those are submitted, we would discuss those under that section of the agenda.
No, I understand.
So if this is approved tonight, we will update the agenda template to include those two sections.
It's attachment 3 in your packet, Deputy Mayor, if that's what you're asking.
Oh, thank you. I missed it, so thank you.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, attachment 3 is the actual form.
I will take any more questions from council or entertain a motion. Councilmember Alders.
I don't have any questions other than I'm very excited to make this motion. Can I motion to accept the changes to the procedure and policy manual, including the agenda request form?
Councilmember Mankey, is your hand raised for a second or for comment? A second? Okay, go for it, Councilmember Alders.
All right, that was my motion. What do I do next?
Oh,
I motioned, he seconded. Your turn.
I'm confused. Then we should take a vote.
Okay. The motion is to approve the protocol manual updates along with the council referral form. So when I call your name, please say yes or no. Councilmember Zorns?
Yes.
Mayor Thompson?
Yes.
Councilmember Alders?
Yes.
Councilmember Mankey?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Alcabra?
Yes.
Passes 5-0 with council members McNeil and Dorr absent and excused.
All right, next up, we have Agenda Bill 22010, consideration for authorization of agreements associated with the WSDOT I-405 Brickyard to State Route 527 Improvement Project. And we just got a big presentation on this. Interim City Manager, are you going to explain this or?
No, Mayor, I believe Johan Jorna is here to
perfect.
present on it from Public Works.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. My name is Johan Jorna, and I'm a Development Review Engineer with Public Works Department, as Aaron just said. WSDOT has already provided a detailed presentation on the I-405 project, and tonight I'll be going over the agreements between WSDOT and the city mentioned earlier. I'm going to try to share my screen right now, and let's see if this works. Can everybody see this okay? Okay, perfect. We've been working with WSDOT to coordinate the content within these agreements and its subsequent review within the city. The I-405 improvements will extend from the southern city boundary at Northeast 160th Street to the northern 228th Street Southwest overpass. These three agreements and easement will provide the framework to facilitate the design build permitting, help reduce unknowns, and ensure that work is done to city standards, pay for additional costs for coordination, and detail the turnover of improvements. These documents have been pre-reviewed by the city technical and legal staff, WSDOT project team, and Attorney General. All three agreements and the easement have a unified recommendation for approval. The first agreement is GCB 3261, Cooperative Agreement. This focuses on the cooperation between WSDOT and the city, allowing for the city's input on design and construction to be conveyed to the design builder of the project. WSDOT will enter into a future contractual agreement with the design build contractor for the final design and construction of the project. As the design build process will take place over the course of several years, this will allow input from city staff to be transmitted to WSDOT and the DB throughout the project. Partnering sessions will be held, including WSDOT, city staff, and the design builder to coordinate and review construction proposals. WSDOT agrees to make quarterly presentations or written updates to the city when requested to do so by city staff. WSDOT will provide the city with copies of documents for review and comment by the city staff on project elements. This includes the design of existing roadways, utilities, grading, stream channel alterations, and permitting within the city. The second agreement is GCB 3262, City Project Coordinator Agreement. This provides a project coordinator that will consult with WSDOT's I-405 project engineer on a basis to be mutually agreed upon by the WSDOT and the city. WSDOT will fund those hours worked by the city project coordinator for activities directly related to the I-405 project. The maximum amount payable by WSDOT to the city under this agreement is $382,000. The city staff and WSDOT believe this is sufficient to cover the coordination efforts throughout the completion of the project. If both parties determine a consultant is appropriate to fill this position, the city agrees to contract for such services and to pay for consultant services in accordance with the contract billing rates. Permitting and inspection costs will be offset by additional permit fees for areas within the city's jurisdiction, including 17th Avenue Southeast, the North Creek Forest, and Brickyard Road. The third agreement is TB10264, which is a turnback agreement that formally conveys certain improvements to the city. This only applies to roadways and infrastructure located outside of the WSDOT right-of-way and includes sidewalk and utility improvements within 17th Avenue Southeast. This will allow pedestrian, bus, and vehicle access to the BRT station and park and ride on the north end of the city. The improvements being turned over to the city will provide benefits to the public, including additional bike lanes, improved pedestrian facilities. Staff have worked proactively with WSDOT to ensure that the planned improvements are designed and constructed to minimize future maintenance work. These facilities will be designed in accordance with our city standards, and the city will own and maintain these improvements just like any other right-of-way. These improvements will be formally conveyed to the city at the completion of the project. The UTB 1468 waterline easement allows for the replacement and realignment of the existing Bothell water main under I-405. The new alignment will be diagonal as shown in yellow on the screen. This allows for the existing stormwater pipe to be upgraded to a fish passable culvert. The easement includes authorization to and requirements for connection of the existing water main at the limits of the replacing area. This includes a slight expansion to the existing easement within private property to allow long-term city operation and maintenance of the new water main. This Bothell-owned water main will be a new ductile iron main, including restraint joints for earthquake mitigation. These agreements and easement will allow the city to be thoroughly involved with both the WSDOT and design builder throughout the multi-year project, as you heard earlier. That directly affects city residences, businesses, and industry. The infrastructure improvements contained within the proposal will serve the needs of the city and assist in providing public transit, pedestrian traffic, and environmental upgrades. These agreements and easement will ensure the aspects of the project meet city needs and obtain maximum benefit of increased transportation infrastructure. City staff has worked extensively with WSDOT, including Public Works leadership and the legal department, to review and approve changes to the attached agreement. At this time, staff recommends approval of WSDOT 522-527 Cooperative Agreement, the Project Coordinator Agreement, the Turnback Agreement, and the Waterline Easement. Thank you for your consideration of these agreements. Are there any questions?
Councilmember Zorns?
Real quick question on slide 5. Is it a water main and stormwater line that's being replaced?
Yes, ma'am. So the stormwater line will be upgraded to a fish passable culvert, and to do that, we have to move the water line slightly. Therefore, we will be getting a new water line.
Okay. All right. And is it a straight replacement or is it a larger?
It is a larger upgrade.
It is a larger upgrade.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And is that, just out of curiosity, it must be Seattle water that goes through there.
I'm sorry, the stormwater will be getting an upgrade to fish passable, but the water line will be the same size.
Oh, it'll be the same size.
Yes, correct.
So is it going to be able to accommodate future growth for the city in that area? Or might we be looking at larger water mains, lines, other places running through other parts?
It should be able to accommodate any growth we have currently forecasted, as it is one of our larger lines.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Alcabra?
Thank you, Mayor. And thank you, Johan, for this. I actually, when we got the packet, one day I decided I want to inflict some pain, and I actually read through the contracts on myself. And I think you guys did an awesome job. Thank you so much for this. It's a lot of work. I do a much smaller contract. This is awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
I was super excited to hear fish passable culverts. All right. I will entertain a motion. Councilmember Zorns?
I'd like to move the recommended action.
Deputy Mayor Alcabra?
Second.
You ready? Please say yes or no when I call your name. Councilmember Zorns?
Yes.
Mayor Thompson?
Yes.
Councilmember Alderks?
Yes.
Councilmember Menke?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Alcabra?
Yes.
Passes 5-0 with Councilmembers McNeil and Dorr absent and excused.
All right. We are going to move on to Agenda Bill 22011, Community Survey and Council Retreat. And Interim Assistant City Manager Becky Range is going to present to us.
Hi, Mayor and council members. Thanks for making time for us tonight. Give me a moment to share my screen here. Can you see that? So just a quick update on some work that we're doing. As Bothell grows and changes, we all know it's really important for City Council and staff to solicit feedback from the entire community and make sure that we're incorporating that into all of our decision making. It's been quite a while since we've had a professional survey done. The last one was actually in 2015. And what a statistically valid survey does for us, it just gives us a valid sample size. It's really important that we have a professional do this survey for us. And this information will kind of set you up for your council priority setting session and budget development. We'll also talk a little bit tonight about the council retreat. So I just wanted to tell you a little bit about how this survey is done. We are working with several different vendors right now to evaluate different ways to do this survey and what would be the best thing for our community. And I have to be honest, most of the survey vendors, they offer very similar things. Most vendors now will use postcard mailers, and those are mailed to addresses within our community with a survey link. Sometimes survey vendors will mail just to registered voters, but we've really opted not to do that for this process. We'd like to survey the entire community, not just registered voters. It is a little bit more expensive to do that, but we think that's pretty important. What this does with the mailers is it ensures that really all of our city is sampled. And so what we'll do is work with the vendor to look at census tracts and neighborhoods to make sure that that survey is blanketed throughout the city. The survey will be done about mid-February through March. And as the survey is done, the vendor, as an independent professional, they're very methodical about it. And as returns start to come in, they really want to make sure that it's inclusive. So if need be, they'll send reminder postcard mailers or follow up with phone calls. And those phone calls do go to cell phones, or we may have to do real targeted outreach. And one of the things that we've been talking about with our survey vendors is that, you know, sometimes someone in the community will learn that these mailers have went out, but maybe they didn't get one to their house, but they're also really interested in doing a survey. And so what we like to do is a complimentary survey through our traditional channels, social media, email, so that they can also have a chance to participate, but we keep those data sets separate because we really want to make sure that the survey is statistically valid and we know that it came from Bothell residents. When we do a survey on social media or through e-news, we're really not quite sure who's actually completing that survey, but it's kind of neat to keep the data set separate and then we can kind of compare the two. How is the survey developed? These vendors that we're working with that will ultimately sign a contract with, they're independent and unbiased researchers. That's really important for us right now. Having not done a survey for quite some time, it's really important to get an inclusive and unbiased survey. And if we were to do a survey internally, we're just not that great at survey methods. It's not our expertise. So it's nice to have an expert do that. There are standard questions for city services. You'll see most municipality surveys have the same kind of set of questions. It asks about how well we're doing, how well we're delivering city services, what does the community think about how well we're doing. But then we can also add customized questions, and that's where we can work to get you information to help inform your priorities and your budget development. One of the things that is really important to us, and I know that it's important to you too, is that a firm have some cultural competency skills. It's important that the way the questions are written, that they're not confusing to different cultures or written in a way that might present a different meaning to someone from a particular group. We also are evaluating the translations and interpretation services that might need to come with a professional survey. So the whole purpose of us doing this survey is so that we can consolidate the community input. And we are working with a facilitator, a professional facilitator, to help you have your council priority setting session, hopefully in April. And so this professional facilitator will take this input, we'll set up a retreat for you. And, you know, what will happen in the very beginning is that this facilitator will actually interview council members to ask you, what do you want out of your priority setting session? And then they'll help set that up and help lead and facilitate that for you. Again, just as a reminder, the priorities that you're setting, they're the foundation of our budget development that will happen most of this year. And it's really important because that informs and guides staff and our goals, objectives, and tasks. Do you have any questions for me? That was just a quick update, but we just want you to know what we're working on and make sure we're headed in the right direction.
Councilmember Aldrich.
Mayor. And thank you, Becky, for this presentation. It's really helpful to just see the thought and intention that this city is putting in.
I don't know. Doesn't look like you're on mute, but we can hear you.
Oh, hi. I think there might be a delay for you, Aaron. Sorry. I heard him. All right. And so my one question is, and maybe you said it and I might have missed it, but what is the targeted sample size for the community survey that would just be going out to census tracts? It sounds like it's not blanketing the entire city. It's not just like Bothell resident.
No.
It sounds like it's sampling specific areas.
Yeah, and I don't know the exact numbers because each survey vendor kind of uses very specific numbers, but I will tell you they're all very similar for statistical methods. It is around 5,000 postcard mailers, 5,000 to 6,000 that go out based on our number of households. And respondents can be around 500 to 700 are a good sample size, which when, I've done community surveys for a really long time, but even when I hear that, I think, gosh, is that really enough? 500 to 700. But this is their area of expertise. And they do know that once they get that sample size, as long as it's geographically representative and it meets certain requirements, it really does give a good picture of community opinion. Does that answer your question?
Councilmember Zorns, I think, had a question.
Yeah, real quick. I don't want to overthink it, but I do appreciate how much thought has gone into this. I do, and I appreciate the being thoughtful of cultural nuances in the questions we ask. Something else to consider is that for a variety of reasons, from a variety of contexts, complex sentence structure can be confusing, not knowing if this isn't your native language, what is modifying what. And so I'm sure, I just need to hear myself say this, because if you're feeling that we've got some good, capable survey companies here, they're probably already on this, but I just need to also say, be really careful about sentence structure, that it's really, really clear that those questions are asking the information that we're looking for and not easily confused.
Yeah, it's a really great point. One of the things that we like about some of the survey vendors is they are very experienced with looking at your limited English proficiency data, like actually looking at your household and your census tract data before they even get started, and really kind of analyzing that to determine exactly how the survey should be developed and in what LEP languages it might need to be translated, or we might need to provide interpretation services.
Deputy Mayor, the Deputy Mayor has his hand up.
Mayor, and thank you, Becky, for opinion. Thank you so much for the presentation. It's awesome. It's great that we're gonna do this after what is it, 7 years now? Last time, yeah. Because just the community has grown quite a bit, and things have shifted. So it's awesome to do this. There are a couple, as you were going through through the criteria, there were a couple of things that I noted. Just my experience as a person who just got off the campaign trail doing some of the tactics that are used for surveys. Postcards, I know they're gonna, send postcards to everybody or sample and then get a percentage and say, call it statistically significant, and that's good. But postcards, likelihood of anybody actually looking at the postcard is going to be very low, unless it's, we do something special on the postcard. So I don't know how effective that is. Calling as follow-ups, nobody answers their phones anymore. So it might be better to text, which is actually probably cheaper. Just suggestions. Sampling a 49,000 person resident city and saying getting 700, and remember that we have a 70-30 split white non-white, and even within the 30% you have splits over there. you might want to go higher sample sizes just to make sure that you're capturing, the diversity that we have in the city properly. The other layer on top of this is that census does not break down races and cultures as people identify themselves, right? So a lot of people are put under white, for example, even though they're not white. So that's one thing just to be to be cognizant of as a suggestion. The last question I have is the retreat. You said in April. Just to give you a heads up, around mid-April is the holy month of Ramadan is going to start. So maybe if we do it in the beginning of April, then that might make the first week of April, that would make it easier for me to attend.
That's a great point. Great input and questions. Thank you so much for that.
All right, last chance, anybody? All right. No, I think this is a wonderful idea. I'm excited to hear from our community in a little bit more formal manner than we've all done with our experience talking to the people that we know. And I just want to say thank you to Becky and Aaron both. I had some questions about this earlier today, and I think you guys are getting to know us very quickly because you had already anticipated all of the questions that I had, and I appreciate the thorough work that you did into bringing this to us. I am really excited to have a council retreat. Like, that seems almost normal, like a thing that we would do, and I am pretty excited for that. I don't really have any questions. You guys have handled those well, answering other council members. Do I have a motion? Deputy Mayor Alcabra?
Just a procedural question. Did we need a motion?
Recommended action is general feedback.
Yeah, we don't really need a vote. Just needed your feedback to make sure we're on the right direction. And I think we got what we needed.
Awesome. Thanks for bearing with me, everyone.
Thank you.
All right. Next up, we have council conversations. Councilmember Zorns.
It's more kind of getting things off my chest, but sure, welcome for conversation. And it's not a request for action to be taken. I just wanted to get it out there and ask you to some things that have been on my mind and think about it. And at some point, maybe we could have some discussions about it. One of them is, I don't know if I'm assuming everybody read an email from someone who lives on East Riverside Drive and was concerned. I saw it myself. It's been a long time concern for my family, for people who were on council. I think that's just one other person here. When we were talking about priority for projects, was it this spring for road improvements and things? This project got put on the hold list. And at some point, I feel we need, and the projects that the city is working on for road improvements, those are all really important. But when we have citizens who are from communities that are underrepresented here in Bothell, in our manufactured home parks, who are trying to get to a bus stop or to get to downtown and are in a wheelchair and driving and riding their wheelchair in the middle of a street because there's no sidewalk, I'm concerned about. So I'm really concerned. So down there at East Riverside Drive, huge hazard. There's no place for any kind of foot or bikes they eventually get a lane. Well, they get a nod to, that's a very generous word for lane, isn't it? They get a nod for keeping an eye out for them. But if you're on a wheelchair, or pedestrian, there's nothing beyond, what is it, 108th? Not much past that. Maybe it's 112th, 100 block. East of that, there's nothing. And there's a bus stop that sits right there on the curve. No place to stand, no way to get to it. And then also we have another pocket over at Green Acres on the west edge. If people want to get down to Canyon Park area, no way to get there. So at some point, I guess my request is, as a council, can we be looking for a way to address that in any way, shape, or form? So that's all I'm going to say about that. But just be noodling and brainstorming. If you have a great idea somewhere down the road, you've got my support on that. Then the other piece is, I don't know if other council members have had contact from, do you want me to name the apartment complex, or shall I just say it's unnamed? I'll name it. The Shag. I have a couple people who have gotten in touch with me since the beginning of summer. And something that I think we need to think about when we were planning these big multifamily buildings, and this is not my day job, so I know that it's much, much more complicated on where you put your garbage, how you control your air intake for getting fresh air into a building. But I will tell you the problem that they have at Shag. Most of those residents are lower income. They cannot afford air conditioning. There's a couple smaller rooms that are air conditioning. During the hottest part of the summer, where it was over 100 degrees, ambient air was being pumped in from the outside into the hallways, and it was going into the units. And so these seniors, who are already pretty fragile, are in a very, what I would consider a very dangerous situation. I went over and stood in the hallways and felt how hot it was. It was pretty unbearable. On top, connected with that, is when there was painting in the garage that was going on later on in the summer, all the fumes were being pumped up into the building and going into the units. Then, the last time I heard from some of the residents, when we had garbage problems, some of you are familiar with our recent garbage pickup problems. Well, their garbage was pretty robust. And again, all that air was coming up through the outside air into the corridors and into the units. So I don't know how we go about planning and mitigating that, but that's a pretty hard way to live. So I just wanted to let you know. I don't know if you've been hearing from those residents, but I thought I would let you know what they've been dealing with. And when we have conversations that might be connected with that, I think those are questions we ought to be asking. So that's it. That's all. I just wanted to let you know what's been on my mind, and some things that I'm going to be looking for as we move forward.
Deputy Mayor Alcabra.
Just a question, Councilmember Zorns. So the first point, I agree, the sidewalks, that's something that came up earlier. I actually had a brief thread with interim city manager on this. So sidewalks, yes, we need to do something about sidewalks. Riverside is problem, but there are a lot of also other problematic areas in the city. The last point, was there something that we can do with the as city council? I mean, that sounds like something that's the property owner needs to handle, right? Like, or just can we put some policies or something in place?
Well, that's a good question. That was a question I was asking about the heat. This summer I was asking, could we require air conditioning? Given everyone is concerned about global warming, do we want to make that part of our code? I don't know. We have a lot of asks on developers that drive up the cost, but at what point do we require more cooling areas, like gathering areas for people to get relief within these buildings? I don't know what the answer is on that. But when we have buildings that are for specific populations, especially, it seems like we ought to be more mindful of them. And I don't think there's anything that we as a city can, unless if there's an obvious health hazard that the city can address. I don't think I'm just speculating here that I don't think there's anything as a city that we can do for the situation that they've got now. That's more between the tenants and the property managers. But down the road, what do we need to address? And are there things that we can fix so that it's not a problem somewhere else?
Councilmember Aldrich.
Okay, I'm actually unmuted, right? Good. So I appreciate this conversation, and it's one that I thought a lot about, especially over the summer. That my backyard was 115. And just recognizing that in an area where people haven't expected needing air conditioning, as the longer we live here, the more we see how necessary it is for health and safety. And so then it's a matter of talking about, well, what are the levers available to us as elected officials and representatives of the people? And I think you're right, Councilmember Zorns, that we don't necessarily have a way to legislate a relationship between developers and tenants in current buildings, but I do think we have the levers and the ability to insert code that says we recognize there's a health concern for future development, and to be able to then make sure or work with staff to determine what that code would be so that we can get air conditioning in future developments and buildings. And it's just a matter of knowing what the legalities of that situation are. And, it's February, which traditionally is a very cold, dark time where people are very over winter, but this is actually the time to be thinking about it and to be talking about it in preparation for the coming summer months. It's the kind of thing that if we just leave the conversation to July, we're too late. We haven't been proactive. We haven't thought about it. We haven't prepared for what we know is coming. We know that the seasons change. We know that heat happens. We know that smoke happens. And it is up to us to prepare for those things. So I'm grateful that you've brought this up tonight, Councilmember Zorns. And if there's anybody else who wants to weigh in, but I also have some thoughts that I'd love to share tonight too.
I'm going to jump in on this conversation before we start another one, because both these are near and dear to my heart. I think East Riverside Drive, I believe that was on our capital facilities plan, and it came off because we had, if I remember right, no funding source identified or no potential funding source identified. And in the last couple of years, I think a lot has changed about that. We are going to have really unprecedented levels of funding coming from both the state and the federal government for active transportation projects. With the passage of the Climate Commitment Act at the state level, and the BIF, I don't know what we call the bill that was recently passed at the federal level. And I think now is exactly the time we need to be thinking about those, because I think that cities that prepare for it and are ready for those first couple years before everybody adapts are going to be really well positioned. That particular spot on East Riverside Drive, that is where I have to go in order to get from my house to downtown. And I ride a cargo bike with a couple kids on the back a lot of the time. And it's not a comfortable experience at all. And I would love to spend this year focusing on, and we'll talk about this in docketing and as we talk about what time is available over the course of the next year. But I think if we had asks ready to go for both the federal and the state level, early by late this year, early next year, I think we could be really well positioned to bring some projects like that back to Bothell. So I thank you for bringing that up. I completely agree with that. I would also love to, we have a bike plan right now. I would love to make that a little bit more holistic down the road and turn that into an active transportation plan. Bike plan kind of conjures up, visuals of somebody who looks like me in a recreational activity. And it's so much more than that. Folks that live in Shag, as an example, wouldn't it be great if they could take a motorized scooter up to QFC safely and get around town? Folks, moving back and forth from the campus. There's so much more than just bikes, and I would love to, have the conversation about how we figure out what we're going to go after in terms of grants, over the course of the coming months. The other thing, in terms of air conditioning, I think there's a really good kind of way to kill two birds with one stone here. I'm a big fan of building electrification in general. It is frankly just much better for the climate, much better for the health of the people that live there. Gas stoves, especially unvented gas stoves, the childhood asthma rates for kids that grow up in those homes is through the roof compared to kids that don't. I would be super interested in, large multifamily and commercial buildings mandating heat pumps in new construction, as that not only electrifies our grid, which is a lot cleaner, but it also provides air conditioning, which we need now. Councilmember Mankey.
Thank you, Mayor. Just wanted to touch on the sidewalks on East Riverside Drive as well. Just like everybody else, I did ask about that during my one-on-one this week with city manager, and sounds like there might be opportunity there with King County, given their rail easement on the north side of the street. It was looked at for a trail, but there was not a lot of movement on King County side, and they now have a new director of parks. So it sounds like we're going to have Director Stroop reach out to that counterpart in King County and see where that is on their list, where the trail is on their list, and see if we can find a way to get it prioritized faster so that we do have a walking area or a biking area for those residents on that street.
And Director Stroop, if you're listening, if there's anything we can do to help, just let us know. Councilmember Aldrich, did you have something else you wanted to bring up?
I just wanted to acknowledge the Lunar New Year that many members of our community today, last night, are celebrating the change of a new year. And I've been having conversations with members of our community about what it takes to get a special event permit in Bothell. And it's not necessarily been the most transparent process in terms of what is the timeline, what is required, and how does one go about doing that. And so Deputy Mayor and I were able to talk to city staff about finding out that information and figuring out a way to make that public so that community groups can easily access it and in the future prepare for special events. One of the visions that has been expressed by the council is cultural events throughout the year and festivals, and just how positive experience it was to see Diwali being celebrated on Main Street. So, the question of Like, well, when do we get to see Lunar New Year celebrated on Main Street? What are other events throughout the year? What are other cultural celebrations can we get the community out to? And by making that information more accessible, and also just having an idea of us as members of as city leadership, kind of anticipating what events might be coming up and knowing who our community partners are in those events so that we can proactively plan for, instead of waiting for community groups to come to us, that we can know that we want to be inclusive and celebrating our community in that way. So that was something on my mind this year, or this week, and just grateful to see that there's more opportunities to get together on Main Street, use Main Street for what its potential is, right? And that's to bring us all together.
Go for it, Deputy Mayor.
I was going to say a second. I mean, we try to do things, and you saw the email from interim city manager, and I feel like we can collaborate amongst ourselves as city government, and then with the community to make Bothell to have celebrations of the different cultures and backgrounds that exist that are here, part of our communities, and contribute to our society and make us the awesome city that we are. So I second everything Councilmember Aldrichs said, and I had to look at her name so I can remember. So because camera and me don't do well together.
I love the idea about being proactive with community events that Councilmember Aldrichs brought up, and just being active about trying to find the communities that have events and saying, hey, we have a space for it. I would also be super interested in so when we did our special events process or permit, we had not closed Main Street. And Main Street is now a place where I feel like a lot of the things that we try to mitigate in that permit process, it should be a little easier than it used to be. So I'd be super interested in if, the interim city manager is probably over there putting her hand on her forehead right now. But if there's a way we could develop a special event process specifically for that space, where we streamline the things that we can, because we don't have to mitigate vehicles on the road. I feel like that's a lot of what we were trying to do with our last process. I would love that. Councilmember Zorns?
I'm totally with you, but we better officially decide what we're going to do with Main Street before we go changing the
cart, horse.
I know.
That makes sense.
But no, you're right. It's a good point. If we close Main Street, and there's going to be some good discussion on that, it would be prudent to make changes. You're right.
Well, regardless of what we do with Main Street, we have bollards that we're going to be bringing out, and a lot of these mitigating factors are going to be a lot easier. So I feel like some sort of special event process where we can cut the red tape that we can cut would be cool to see too. All right. I think we've about reached the end of the festivities tonight. Thank you all, and thank you staff for being here as well.
We do have a.
Oh, yeah. We have an executive session, but we are going to adjourn from the executive session. So this is the closing of this part of the meeting.
Yes, thank you.
And is there anything else I needed to say other than we're going to adjourn from executive session?
Mayor Thompson, you need to say what the executive session is and how long you anticipate being in there.
Perfect. We are going to have an interim city manager performance review pursuant to RCW 4230-110-1G, anticipated to last 30 minutes with no action.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I will see you all in the executive session.
All right, good night, and I'll see you guys later.